All right, I will go ahead and call this meeting of the City of Boise Public Works Commission to order, and I will start with a quick roll call to let us know who's here. So please let me know if you're here when I call your name. Commissioner Ellis?
Here.
Commissioner Crowley?
Here.
Commissioner Hilton? Commissioner Morgan? Commissioner Collette?
Here.
Commissioner Lockett? All right, so with the four of us here, the first item on our agenda today is the approval of the minutes from our last regular meeting on July 6th, and I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move for approval of the minutes of our meeting on July 6th.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Yep, I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, the same sign? Hearing none, the motion carries. And that takes us to our regular agenda today. And the first item for discussion is the 2022 minimum compost commodity pricing. And I will turn it over to staff for presentation.
Thank you, Chair Gravatt. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Sorry, I couldn't be there in person. I've got COVID, so I'm quarantined, and I have my handy dandy cough drops, so because I will start coughing at some point. So I apologize for that as well. So our first item is going to be covered by Peter McAuliffe, our solid waste program manager. This is an annual. Well, I guess we're hoping that it becomes maybe every 3 years, but it's very similar to how we set our farm commodity prices. One of the most important aspects of those price points is that we're not undercutting local markets. That was a point back when the program first started. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and turn it over to Peter for the discussion of the compost minimum commodity price. And I cannot hear Peter. If others are having
You're here
problems.
now, Steve?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I don't think the microphone was on. Sorry about that.
No problem.
All right, so as Steve said, we're going to just do a brief presentation on our compost program today and the minimum pricing that we're going to set for the next contract. So we'll do a brief program update on the compost program, talk about the sales in the past, and then we'll also ask for a motion to set the minimum price. So our compost program has been really successful, and we have some data from 2021 on the amount of material collected, 32,000 tons of material collected, which that represents 31% of the waste, residential waste that we diverted. And so we're really proud of the program. It's our largest diversion program, and we saw a 4% increase in the rate of diversion since 2020. We produce approximately 25,000 cubic yards of finished compost each year. That varies based on a lot of things, but we've noticed that it varies on the weather and if you have a lot of precipitation during the growing seasons too. And just to give you an idea of what cubic yards, that's 3 by 3 by 3 in a cube, but a full-size pickup truck is about 2 cubic yards if that's filled up. Sometimes it's hard to picture, so it's a lot of material. We also expanded our compost facility in 2021. We added about 7.5 acres to the facility. That allowed us to accept all the material that we collect in the program. And previously, we have had to, I think when the compost facility was originally designed, we didn't know the participation, how many people are going to participate, how much stuff they were going to put in there. So when it was originally designed, it was probably a little under-designed, probably a little smaller than it needed to be. So we were having to divert some of the compostable material to other composting facilities, and about 13% of that in the last year. So we're really excited now with the expansion that we're going to be able to accept all the material. We're also working on a seal of testing assurance certification for our compost. That's through the United States Composting Council, where we're a member, and that basically it'll make the compost a little bit more marketable, and we just have to go through a couple more testing requirements to sort of prove the quality of the compost. So what do we do with our compost? Originally, when we started the program, it was we decided that the priority was to return the compost that the customers are giving us, the compostable material that they're giving us, and give it back to the community. So we have 2 give back sites, one Idaho Botanical Gardens and one at the West Boise Water Renewal Facility. Those are permanent, they're open all year, and people can come and get a pickup truck's worth of compost at either of those sites. We also have a community give back program where we deliver compost in larger quantities to community organizations and to like community gardens and neighborhood associations. That's been growing. We've only had it for about 2 years now, but it's been growing and the community likes that. So we try to save compost for that also. And we use it at some city facilities. We're continuing to try to grow that and use it as many places as we can at the city. Parks uses a lot of our compost. So the remaining compost that we have, we sell on the wholesale market. Even though we give away a lot, we can't give away all of it. So we have some to sell, and that is one of the main topics that we'll be talking about today. So moving on to our sales and minimum pricing. So our current contract is with Timber Creek Recycling. They're a great partner of ours. They also do composting in the valley, and it's for 15,000 cubic yards annually. The price is $2.50 per cubic yard, and it's a 3-year contract, which is ending in October of this year. You can see the gross sales revenue there of about $37,000. We're in the next contract, what we're trying to do is we really want to increase the sort of visibility of our product and make sure that there's as many people in the community and businesses that can purchase our compost. So we're trying to increase the use and the sales, and make sure that smaller companies can also participate in the sales process. So the approach to our compost sales in the coming year will be to repeat our open bid process for wholesale buyers. We've actually had 4 buyers that have already contacted us and are interested in purchasing compost. So that's a good sign. As I said earlier, we estimate production at about 25,000 cubic yards. We're going to retain approximately 9,000 cubic yards for the give back programs that I spoke of earlier, and to have a little extra stockpile because you just never know what's going to happen, or if we're going to find another outlet for some, or one of our city facilities, wants more. So we kind of want to keep a little extra. That leaves us with about 16,000 cubic yards to sell on the wholesale market. And what we're going to do this year, or what we would like to do this year, is sell a large volume lot, which would be about 12,000 cubic yards, and then a smaller volume of 4,000 cubic yards. As I mentioned, the last 3-year contract, it was 15,000 cubic yards, which was our estimate for how much we could sell, and it's all to one person. And we're hoping to increase our exposure by selling it to the different businesses, and a small increase in revenue by doing it this way. Now, just to clarify, this is an open bid, so you could have the same person bid on both of those volumes, and the same person could get them if they are the highest bidder. So when we set up the minimum pricing for this, it's a little different. Steve mentioned the farm commodity process and how they set their minimum prices. Unfortunately, with wholesale compost, we don't have an index or something to look at that just says this is how much you should sell, wheat for. We don't have one of those for compost. And so what we're planning to do this year is we're going to base it off the winning bid last year, because that's how much people were willing to pay for it. In 2019, with the last contract. And we just added the CPI inflation index from 2019 till present. That got us to about $2.93. And so considering it's it's going to be another 3-year contract, we rounded up to $3 per cubic yard. And that'll be for the large volume lot, because it's a similar amount of product as in 2019. And then for the smaller volume, we added about 25% increase in that price to make that go up to about $4 per cubic yard. It's a smaller volume. It's not as much of a risk to the purchaser as purchasing, the larger volume, and so it's a little more expensive. And our projected minimum gross revenue from this price structure would be $52,000 a year. So a little bit, we're trying to move that up, but move it up slowly so we still have demand for the product. And that, of course, that revenue just offsets program costs. So that's all I have. Are there any questions on our
Any
pricing?
Questions? Yes.
Yeah,
Commissioner.
sorry.
Thank you. I had a question. What did the expansion displace when you were able to carve out more land to expand it? What was going on? Was it just empty piece of 20 Mile?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Ellis. Yeah, it was empty, and it was part of the compost facility. So the original compost facility included that land, but it was not developed as a place where we could put windrows and actually compost. So in order to do that, you have to have certain drainage requirements. You have to have what they call a pad, right? And so it was just brush, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Commissioner Collette, and then we'll get to Commissioner Crowley.
Thank you. I'm curious as to what it actually costs to run the program, because 52,000 seems like, that barely covers a single salary.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Yeah, the $52,000 a year, as I said, it's a small program offset. And so composting, it costs approximately about $2 million a year. And so it's not a money-making operation. It's designed to offset all the waste that's going into the landfill and to help the landfill last longer so we don't have to pay for a new landfill.
Thank you.
And maybe we'll jump in, Chair. Sorry, this is hard being remote, but when we instituted the compost program, Commissioner Collette, it was about a $3.17 per month rate increase per customer. Just to put that in perspective, like what is the cost to a ratepayer? So for $3 a month, they can compost all of their food waste, garden waste, which from our perspective, it provided pretty good value to the community. So just put that cost in perspective.
I mean, it's a great program. I make use of it.
Great.
Commissioner Crowley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One question was already asked and answered. And Peter, I was wondering, in the event you have a contract for supplying X number of cubic yards of compost, and for some reason you're not able to fulfill the terms of that agreement, is there any liability exposure to the city as a consequence of that?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. We write into the contract that if we're not able to provide the full amount of compost that's contracted, that we have, I believe it's 60 days, either 60 days or 90 days to provide that compost to the buyer. And if we're not able to do it by that time, then they wouldn't be charged for it. So I don't believe there's a great liability. We try to make it so that it would be really difficult for us not to be able to provide it.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had is what the feedback has been from those that are participating in the program, that are picking up compost and using it without cost. The citizens that are using the product. Have you gotten feedback from those folks, and what's that been like?
Yeah, we do get feedback from the residents all the time, and they really love the compost. They love that we have 2 places for them to pick it up, that it's not restricted. Granted, we say, you can only pick up 2 cubic yards a year. It's kind of tough to police that. So, they're really happy with it. They like the product. They use it for a variety of uses, whether it's in their garden, using it as a top dressing, using it on grass. So we really get great positive feedback on the material, and using it for some of the community gardens also. People have really appreciated that, where we deliver it to those facilities, any nonprofit organization or neighborhood group. They really like that, because sometimes people don't have the vehicle to be able to transport that themselves, and so we really get a lot of great feedback from that.
It's a great program, Peter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I have one question. Has there been much engagement or outreach to organizations like schools, universities, 4-H, who might make use of the compost as well as an offering?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Commissioner. We have done some outreach, and we do put it up on our website and try to get the word out there. I like the ideas of working with the schools to do it, and working with their community gardens. I believe we have done that with one of the schools before, but I think it's a great idea, and I think it's something that we can certainly do.
Awesome. I'll keep that in my back pocket when I talk to schools.
Great.
Any other questions, comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Councilmember Willetts.
I just wanted to echo that I think this is an incredible program. I've used it. I've got a couple garden beds. One looks great, one looks poor. Wasn't the compost, it was gardener. So I just think it's an amazing thing that we offer to the city, and thanks for making it happen.
Thank you. Really appreciate the support, Commissioner.
Awesome. Seeing nothing else, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So our recommendation is to approve the 36-month minimum compost commodity prices as listed. The request would be that the commission recommend to City Council adoption of a resolution approving the minimum price list. This would provide authorization to the Public Works Director or his or her designee to negotiate compost sales agreement with City Council and final contract approval. And you can see our suggested motion on the lower portion of the slide.
All right. And with that, there is the suggested motion on the slide, and I would entertain a motion.
Commissioner
I make a motion to move the recommendation to be approved, which will establish a minimum price for the sale of compost from the 20-mile South Compost Facility for 36 months.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Collette. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the next item on our agenda, the Whitewater Lift Station design, construction, and funding update. And with that, I will turn it back over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Gravatt. This topic's a really interesting one, and it's somewhat complicated. So we've got a fairly, I'll say, detailed presentation of what we're proposing that we'd like the Commission's approval for, and to present, present the information is going to be Deanne Brown. She's one of our crack engineers in the engineering department within Public Works. She's done really good work on this, and we're really interested to hear your perspective on our recommendation. And with that, I will turn it over to Deanne.
Thanks, Steve. All right, I'm here to talk about the need for construction and funding of Whitewater Lift Station, which is a new regional lift station in the city of Boise. And at the end, I will be requesting a motion. So first, we're going to talk about where the lift station is located, which is in the 30th Street Redevelopment District. And then we'll review the existing sewer system, talk about the sewer study that we completed, and then go on to a proposed project and how much it's going to cost and how we will fund it, review portions of the sewer extension policy. I'll provide our recommendation and suggested motion, and then we'll have time for questions, and then we can go back to the motion. So 30th Street Redevelopment District, where is this? It's in West End downtown. So I've got this map here. It's between downtown and the river, mostly around Main Street and Fairview. It used to be home to a bunch of auto-oriented businesses that were cut off from the mainstream of traffic when I-184 connector was built in '92. So now it's just a bunch of bare land or smaller businesses that are ripe for redevelopment. And Capital City Development Corporation created the 30th Street Redevelopment District in 2014, and they now have some funds to support utility infrastructure improvement. They also anticipate 1,400 to 2,000 residential units to be built in the pretty near term, near 27th Street and Fairview, and that's a pretty large impact to the sewer system. Let's talk about what the city has done to change this area. In 2009, before the development, the district was created, most of this area was C2D and C3D, which is smaller commercial services. That was the zoning, and that's kind of what is reflected in what's built there currently. After that, when the district was created and we provided a master plan for the area, the city increased the zoning option up to C5, which is the downtown core zoning, which has no height limits and fairly minimal setbacks from property lines. So you can imagine how people will build vertical. And it hasn't gone through yet, but there is some proposed zoning changes that will also increase the area south of the I-84 connector to that C5, or what they're proposing to call it in the future is MX5 zoning. So we're seeing a lot of potential for redevelopment in this whole corner of town. And the design review applications that we've been getting are in excess of 100 dwelling units per acre, which in downtown commonly we're probably more sitting around from 20 to 50 currently. So these are some pretty large residential developments. And this is a map of the ones that we know about, or the ones that are ripe for redevelopment. So the blue ones are St. Luke's 27th Street facility and Adair Manor. Those are under construction or already built. The pink ones are ones that have development or design review applications in with planning and development zoning services. And those ones have about a 2 to 3 year timeline for occupancy. So it's coming fast. The orange ones are ones that are on CCDC's mind, Capital City Development Corporation. And then the red properties are the ones that I identified as maybe are currently underused. So before we get into the nitty-gritty details, let's review how a sewer system works. You flush your toilet in your house, it drains to a larger pipeline that's in the street. That pipeline in the street is called a gravity sewer main. And then in general, we try to have gravity sewer mains be open flow that flows down slope, so we don't have to pay for pumping. However, at certain times or certain locations in the city, you get into a low spot and you have to pump water back uphill to then again flow gravity downstream. So what we call those facilities are pump stations, or in this case, I'm calling it a lift station. And the pressure pipeline to pump it uphill can be called a force main or a pressure pipeline, pressure sewer. There's lots of different names. And then eventually gets to the treatment plant. And we do lots of other things there. So the existing sewer system in this area, this map has a big black border. This is the study boundary that we created. This is kind of where we expect some major sewer upgrades are going to need to happen. So in this area, the dark blue pipelines are 8-inch pipelines and the purple ones are 6-inch pipelines. So you can see that most of the pipelines in the area are pretty small diameter. Also, not all of it has pipelines in all of the streets, so it's not fully served. A lot of the sewer is built in the 50s, 60s. Some of it is concrete or clay pipes that maybe needs rehabilitation in the future. And then, so we're expecting to do some work here pretty soon anyway. And some of these pipes were built below minimum slope, which causes some maintenance issues and definitely lowers the capacity of the pipeline. There's also one small lift station in Riverside Park called Tower Lift Station, and it's in need of rehabilitation. So we did a sewer study in 2020 when we started getting wind of these projects that were coming. And then we updated it in 2022 for increased residential units. And the major outcome of the study was the best solution for the area is to install a new regional lift station. The ideal location for the lift station is somewhere between Whitewater and 28th Street on Main Street. So we've gone with 28th and Main. And the study also identified moving some pipes out into the street out of alleyways or deepening some pipes, and also increasing the pipe diameter to serve the increased flows. The highlighted green area is the phase 1 improvements. That's kind of what's needed to serve these developments that are incoming in this area. Another benefit of building the Whitewater lift station is we can then abandon Tower lift station. So it's a nice swap, one lift station for another. So what has to happen right now is building the lift station and its discharge pipeline. That's what needs to happen for those 3 incoming projects. They'll also have to build a little bit of gravity sewer to their project, but the whole widespread extent of the study, that work can happen over a longer period of time. So what we're proposing now is to build a new lift station at 28th Street and Main, a 530 feet of 8-inch force main to the end of our current gravity sewer, and then upgrading that gravity sewer to a 15-inch pipe diameter to where it will connect to our existing 36-inch trunk line that has capacity for the developments. And the projected cost of design and construction of this project is $3.2 million. How are we going to fund it? Well, thankfully, it's almost net cost. So Capital City Development Corporation has committed $2 million for the infrastructure improvement of this project. And that can be available to the city under a memorandum of understanding as a reimbursement when the project is complete. And that money is available October 2023. We also are currently estimating $951,000 that will come into the city as connection fees from increased capacity, those projects that are getting built. Now, that number is an estimate because we don't know what's going to get built. It could be a little bit lower, it could be a little bit higher, but it's still a significant amount of money. And we can allocate the $3.2 million in the utility fund right now through an interim budget change to make this work start immediately. Construction would be at the end of fiscal year 2023 and finish in fiscal year 2024, but design would start as soon as possible. The easement for the lift station site is provided from Roundhouse Development at no cost because we are vacating a pipeline easement that's larger than the easement for the lift station. Some of the gravity sewer pipeline extensions to the new developments will need to be built by the developers building their buildings. And then additional sewer in the area of the sewer study can be worked into our small diameter rehab program. So the city would like to participate in funding, design, and construction of this project. And the sewer extension policy allows this through this portion of the language. And we believe that the language for creation of permanent jobs and affordable housing apply to this project, and it will improve the quality of life in this area of town. So we do need Public Work Commission's blessing for it. And this is the staff recommendation. We can read through it after your questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission?
Chair, I had a question.
Yes, Commissioner Morgan.
I was wondering about what would happen to the tower lift station since you would change over to the Whitewater. Would that still exist or would that be taken out? I was just curious.
Yeah, thank you. We would decommission the tower lift station. So we would build pipelines that would take that flow to the new lift station by gravity. And then the need for the existing lift station would no longer be there. And so we would remove the control panel, the pumps from the wet well and fill the wet well with rock and probably cover it up with grass because it's in a park.
Other questions from the commission? All right, hearing none, I believe that we have a motion, and I would entertain a motion.
Chair,
Commissioner Ellis.
I move that the Public Works Commission recommend Boise City Council approve the interim budget change to design, construct, and finance the Whitewater Lift Station project in accordance with the current sewer extension policy as presented.
All right, motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, the same sign? Hearing none, the motion carries. Awesome, and thank you. Look forward to the improvements in my neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, and that brings us to the next item on our agenda, the Recycled Water Program Update and Policy Primer. And I will turn it back over to Director Burgos to set us up.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair Rapp. So this last topic is a pretty exciting one, in my opinion. Not that the others weren't, but this is regarding our recycled water program, and we are really starting to roll up some sleeves and have some pretty in-depth, intense policy discussions around the recycled water program. This really is the excuse me, the first time in a very long time that we're starting up something that can be certainly interpreted as a new, almost new utility within a utility, right? The recycled water program is a very different concept. And so tonight, this afternoon, Haley Faulkner and Royce Davis are going to present first a discussion of some kind of strategic direction around the recycled water program that we'd like to confirm with you all, and then give you an overview of some of the policy topic areas, and one policy topic area in particular that we're going to be coming back to you with to get affirmation on, so that we can move forward and develop other policy questions. So this will be likely, our hope is that the policy discussions will turn into a fairly frequent cadence with the commission that will be coming back to you periodically with the next policy discussion and affirmation, the next one after that, policy discussion and affirmation. And I'll let Haley and Royce talk about the process for that and turn it over to them to get us kicked off. Haley?
Thank you, Steve, Chair, Commissioners, Council Member. Steve shared a bit about what I was going to intro, because really most of this is Royce's show, but wanted to provide, of course, a touch point in the Recycled Water Program development as we move along, share what's coming here. I think there's some exciting things that y'all will want to see and hear about and be a part of as we move into the next several months. But as we've set up the sort of lanes of work and talked with you about things like pilot testing and communications, the site characterization, one of the areas that we've listed is this policy development, but not necessarily dove much into the details. So today, what Royce will present is, again, that touch point on the overall program, but then talk a little bit about what we mean when we mention policy. What does that do for us in the context of building out a program like the Recycled Water Program, and how will it help us inform decision-making? And this is very much the initial conversation, and a couple points within the presentation that we do want to stop and ask for questions and feedback, and really reinforce that this is the beginning of this policy conversation, but hopefully kind of a new-ish lens, or sort of codifying some of the work that we're doing and taking in things like the stakeholder engagement, the technical details, and putting that into policy that then helps us move this program forward in a way that reflects those pieces. But I don't want to take up Royce's time, so he'll jump into the presentation, then we'll be here for discussion and questions.
Okay, Chair, Commissioners, Council Member, happy to be back in front of the Commission today to talk about the Recycled Water Program. Like I said, we've been busy working on a lot of different aspects of the program, but today, like I said, we'll give a little quick overview of the Recycled Water Program framework, and then also some of the policy primer and development that we'll be working on in the future and be getting your input on. Just to recap, the Water Renewal Utility Plan was started in 2015 and finished up in 2020. So 5 years of community engagement and stakeholder outreach, getting information about the city of Boise and what the community feels is important, that water is important, and what we do with our water is important. So we have the utility plan, and then we also have the climate action strategy, section 18 specifically, which has to do with the water supply and resilience, which talks about the diversifying the city's water supply and preserving groundwater and protecting the Boise River. So we have those two documents that kind of lead the framework for the Recycled Water Program and help us, kind of lay out the framework for what we can do with the recycled water. So the program framework, which okay. I was missing a slide in there. There was a slide in there originally that had, I wanted to recap what the recycled water program was, and I'll just do that. So we take the industrial water from South Boise is where we're currently looking at, and we'll take that industrial effluent and it'll go into a recycled water facility, which is, I think the last presentation, we talked about the ultrafiltration, reverse osmosis, and the granular activated carbon. Okay. And then once it goes through the recycled water facility, there we go. Thank you, Haley. So that was the quick overview of the program. Goes through the recycled water facility, or sometimes it's titled the third facility, and then goes into groundwater recharge and industrial reuse, were the two that we laid out in the utility plan. So that's just a recap of what the program is. And then to talk about some of the lanes and the progress that we've made so far in the overall schedule. So this is 2022. Leading up into 2029, we'll be producing recycled water. In the yellow top highlighted section there, the one thing we're excited about is this fall, we'll have the recycled water pilot, which will be out in the Micron parking lot, which we should have up and running hopefully by the first of the year. So we have that going, which will feed into the overall design of the recycled water facility. We'll use the information and the technology there to move that into full scale. We also we have to find a site for the recycled water facility, which we haven't really started working on that selection yet, but that'll be coming up in 2023. There's also permit applications with Idaho Department of Water Resources and Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, which we'll be working that in 2023. And then there's also, we talked about in that last presentation, was the source water characterization, or going out into South Boise and drilling wells and looking at the groundwater and the geological characteristics. That work has been delayed until almost a year, really. We've had a hard time contracting well drillers. We've looked all over the Western United States and can't find anybody to come drill any wells. So it'll likely be next year at this time that we'll be doing that work. So that's been a delay in the program. And then once we finish that work, obviously construction from 26 to 29, and then hopefully in 2029, we'll have the facility up and running, producing recycled water. And again, kind of how this funnels into decisions that we make. We have the utility plan, climate action roadmap, water program strategies, and what we're currently working on now. And we look forward to getting your input on is the why and the how that we do this, right? How do we take water and produce recycled water, which will lead to outcomes. And then eventually we'll have policy development, which we'll also be working on in the next couple of years. So we have, the community input and also policy that kind of guide those things into the outcome or the finished product. Any questions on that, the overview or the schedule or the framework?
Any questions from the commission so far?
Okay.
Hearing none.
Great, thanks. Okay, so next, as we went out into the community, we did a lot of, the stakeholder outreach, the community engagement, the listening tour, and some different things. We've gathered data from the community, and we're able to track what was important to them as far as water in Boise and recycled water. And it led us to try to define why we are doing this, or what are the key outcomes that we want from the recycled water program. So we've spent a lot of time as a team trying to develop what we call our why statement, which is, I'll go ahead and read this: why recycled water? And this is something that hopefully will make sense. So the recycled water program will help preserve groundwater for drinking purposes to address climate impacts, provide long-term stewardship over water resources, and protect the Boise River. So again, this statement is something that we want to be able to, tell the community on why we're doing this. And we feel like it really lays out why we're doing recycled water in Boise. Okay. The next is how. How will we do this? The first is we'll take redirect flows from South Boise customers. So industrial customers in the South will take their the water that would normally flow to Lander Street and the West Boise water renewal facilities, and we'll redirect that into the recycled water facility. Then we'll produce fit for purpose recycled water. So we'll take that water and we'll filter and treat it to a level or standard that is correct for where it's going to go, right? Whether that's back to an industry or for irrigation or whatever we term best. So we treat it to the right level of treatment. And then the third is distribute that recycled water for the highest and the best use. So obviously we treat the water, and then we'll have to get the water to wherever it needs to go. And then the key outcomes of the program were to increase system capacity, which I meant to mention earlier, that all future sewer capacity or water renewal capacity will be with recycled water. So we'll increase the system capacity. The second thing we'll do is increase resilience to water scarcity, which is by producing a new water supply. So you have surface water, groundwater, and now we'll have recycled water, which adds to that water supply for the community. And then the third is to demonstrate regulatory stewardship, which I like to kind of think of that one as, planning for the future regulatory needs. So the recycled water facility, we use a lot of new technology, and that will help us plan for meeting future regulatory limits and those types of things, conditions. Okay. And then just to pause again for a quick review of the why, the how, and the key outcomes, and see if there's any questions or if that meets your expectations.
Commissioners, what are your thoughts up to this point? Well, I'll go ahead and jump in and say that this aligns pretty well with the expectations that I had throughout the process, and I am looking forward to diving in more of the weeds and learning more and hopefully asking some more tough questions.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I should have said, again, these are all draft, something that we're working on. They're not finalized by any means, but so thank you.
Any other thoughts, commissioners? Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you. I guess I was thinking about, you said you were having a hard time finding a contractor to do the drilling. And so you're pushed it out to, you said this time next year? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Hopefully this time next year, we'll be doing that site characterization work. I mean, it should be in the spring, but by this time in the summer, we should be well into it.
Okay.
Doing that work.
I guess I was wondering, was it more of when you think they'll be available again, or it was when it fits better with your schedule? I'm just trying to figure that out.
That's based off of when we think we can get well drillers contracted.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would assume it's having to do with everything, staffing. They have, delays, everything seems to be delayed.
Yep. And basically, if you want to get one on the books, you almost need to go out about a year to get one scheduled to do the drilling work.
Wow.
So we were a little too optimistic in the bidding to get somebody on contract.
Thank you.
I actually do have a question.
Commissioner Collette, and then we'll jump over to Commissioner Morgan.
Perfect, thank you. And I'm sorry if I missed this, but if the water that we're currently going to be capturing for recycling, if it weren't going to be recycling, where is it currently going?
It currently goes to both Lander Street and the West Boise water renewal facility. So that's how we increase the capacity by redirecting that flow to the new recycled water facility. That allows more capacity at both of those, Lander Street and West Boise.
And follow-up question: of all the water that's used in Boise, and I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, what percentage of that water used is run through the existing facilities?
I would have to guess, but if I were to guess, it's probably 15 to 20%. But it's roughly 5 million gallons a day, so it's a decent amount of water.
Yeah, I was going to chime in, Chair, about so if you think about, we treat about 30 million gallons a day, so this is a 5 million gallon per day facility. So again, Royce is spot on. It's about 10 to 15% ish.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan?
Hi, yes, I had a question on how did you get these expectations? I think they align like really well with what we were envisioning, or at least I was envisioning for this. But I just wanted to get clarity if this was determined through like I know there were a lot of listening sessions and focus groups, if that was determined through those, or if it was a combination of other things.
I would say it's a combination of the utility plan, the listening tour, the community engagement, and then the meetings that we've had with the different stakeholders.
Okay.
Coming out what, we kept track of what everybody, the priorities and comments that they made. And, we were able to figure out what the majority said. And that's what we tried to include in that why statement.
Yeah, no, they're very nice. Thank you.
Chair and Royce, if I could, just as a follow-up, a similar approach that we took in the utility plan development, where we would go out and kind of ask the community about a set of topics, come back and develop kind of the next set of things, but then go back out and test it and see if what we created, in that case, it was like the portfolios of water options, did that align with what we had heard? And so the same model here, where we went out and heard sort of the values that the community, we heard from you all, heard from those sessions, took those and then internally developed these statements to hopefully reflect what we'd heard. But this is our initial round of testing. Did we hear adequately, and have we produced a how and a why set of statements that match what you expect?
Thank you.
And I'll tag team that. A good example was when you all told us, we asked what resonates with you when we talk about the aquifer, groundwater, et cetera. You all, I think it may have been unanimous groundwater. So you'll see when we're talking in the talking points and the hows and the whys, we're consistently talking about the groundwater. In the past, we talked about aquifer recharge. Well, that wasn't resonating. So we heard from you all, the better way to phrase it was groundwater, right? So that's just one example of how we're trying to integrate the feedback that stakeholders are giving us so that we can better communicate what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And then just one other thing to add, to Royce's point and to Commissioner Collett's question about like the percent of what this new facility will treat, excuse me, I would also add that this, the flow that we're diverting is also an interesting flow in that the Micron facility in Boise is an R&D facility. And so what they send to Lander Street in West Boise can vary greatly, as one would expect. They're trying different processes and new approaches to chip manufacturing. So there's we think an additional benefit that by diverting this flow, we can build a facility that can better handle those maybe swings of constituents, because it can be at times a challenge for the existing facilities. Micron's been really good to us by giving us a heads up. Hey, we're going to be sending this your way in a week or so. But I think that's another benefit that we're going to see out of the facility. And also that we can, Haley just chatted me, that we can bring on capacity faster, because the way we're setting up the design of this facility is going to be fairly turnkey. We'll get the first 5 million gallons per day set. And then let's say a company really wants to come to Boise. We can say, look, we can add on another treatment train very quickly. It'll be designed so that you can kind of, this is easy for me to say, but plug and play, like we can throw another train on very, very quickly. We'll be following that same kind of set of treatment trains that precede it and kind of replicating that. So.
Chair Gravatt?
Yes, Commissioner Collette.
Yeah, so I think just to kind of tag on to what's already been discussed. So I think in any kind of sort of statements that we put out to public, when we're talking about this new facility, I do think it would be helpful to have some of those quantifiable numbers out there so that people can, because they may have heard that we have water treatment facilities, they may not have heard, but to kind of understand what the city is already doing, what additional capacity this would add, I think it's helpful to people kind of to really grasp the depth of what it is that you're actually doing.
Thank you for that.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you. I just agree with Commissioner Collette that having kind of like call it the cheat sheet, or the legend nearby, that would be great. Yeah. Okay. Having those numbers. 'Cause we forget every time.
Yeah, we can do that.
Right. And a slight counterpoint to that, I don't want us to get lost in the data, in the numbers, as well as we are talking to the community. I think that knowing that this is sort of the kind of modular ounce of prevention to keep some of our more difficult constituents out of our regular treatment facilities is perhaps a pretty good phrasing. And I think that is captured fairly well in the why statement and the how.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. Yeah, I'll turn it back to you to keep going.
Okay, so like we talked, we've been working on policy and policy primers, which are tools to help us make decisions. And policies are important, you know, because it basically keeps us in line. It gives us direction when we make decisions. You know, and it documents those policies. It's transferable to the public, the community. And then we can, you know, if people ask us why we did things, we can refer to the policy and which gives us the reason why we did that. And then also decisions informed by policy are aligned with the community values. So as we talk to the community and the stakeholders, we can, you know, get their input on the policies and help us, you know, shape those policies so that we can, you know, basically form them together so they make sense. One that we've been working on in the next couple of years, what we call our priority policies. And these will kind of, as Steve mentioned earlier, as they'll come, you know, one after another, basically over the next 2 years, these different policies, we'll bring them and get your input on them. The first one that we're working on is the highest and best use policy, which is really, you know, establishing a market development and really what we do, what is best for the recycled water, right? Is it industrial reuse or groundwater recharge, or is it irrigation, or is it on irrigating city facilities, providing water to city facilities, or different opportunities that we have for the water? And that highest and best use policy will be the first one that we bring back to the commission. The next one is water authority. And basically this is the approach which we maintain. So the water comes through the recycled water facility, and how do we maintain authority or ownership of that water so that we can provide it or distribute it to industry or to put it in the ground for recharge. So there's the water authority policy. The service expansion policy, which is, you know, as we grow the recycled water and we have, maybe it's a new industry that would like to discharge to the recycled water facility, what water quality standards or requirements do we set so that they can be allowed to, you know, expand the amount of water that we bring into the facility? So we'll have to work on the requirements of that water quality and quantity as well, right? So how much can we take? How much do we want to take? Those types of decisions. The good neighbor policy, which is, I think, you know, community engagement, education, workforce development, if we end up in South Boise, you know, how can we be, you know, set policies so that we can be, you know, good neighbors to everybody around us, whether it's business or if there's communities or planned communities, providing water to them, those types of things that we'll set policies around. And then organizational authority, kind of like Steve said, where this is a utility within a utility. How do we set that up? You know, charging for the water rates, collecting funds, all those types of things, which will be in the organizational authority policy. So those are the 5 that we'll be working on over the next couple of years, the 5 main high priorities. And again, the highest and best use, like I said, will be the first one that we come back with, which we've already started on. So hopefully in September, we can come back to the commission and present the highest and best use policy and get your input on that. Next steps, again, as you know, we've came to the commission today, we'll start going back out into the community, meeting with our stakeholders, discussing the program framework, and then also the beginning of that highest and best use policy to get the stakeholder and the community input back on those items. So that'll all be starting here in the next couple of weeks. So Any questions from the commission?
Any questions from the commission so far? Commissioner Ellis.
Thank you. Can you show the slide before this? When it showed nope, sorry, one more back. No, yeah, priority policies. Thank you. Are those going to be in succession? You said you're going to start on highest and best use first, and then each one will be in succession, or maybe some will happen at the same time.
Yeah, yes. So highest and best use first, water authority will probably second. After that, I'm not sure which one of the next three will come first, but the first two are, I would say, are in order. The next three are still to be determined.
And then once you get to each one, it'll kind of go through the same process you just mentioned about the outreach and.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. And I don't think we've talked about different options. I know there's been some focus groups with the commission and things, doing some things like that too with them as well. So we're still working out those details.
Chair, I had a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sure that it's probably going to get built in somewhere, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a policy, and I don't think it might fit under policies, but longevity planning. I mean, we're working with a sustainable resource and we're trying to make it even more sustainable locally. But I just thinking about like hundreds of years in the future, trying to plan for those sorts of things. I think that would be beautifully woven into like the frameworks, trying to really think about that longevity planning.
Okay. Thank you.
I am curious about the state of the community outreach and engagement as we go through these priority policy areas. What are some of the planned types of outreach, education, engagement, and information gathering, and how might folks be able to plug in and provide feedback on any, learn and provide feedback on any of the proposals as we do move through?
No, it's a great question, Chair. And I honestly don't have the exact details of that. I think we're just beginning the next phase of community engagement. Kind of, we did that first phase in the spring and early summer. And we've had the summer, we're getting ready to start the second phase. Other than meeting with I'll call them our normal stakeholders, obviously, but starting that second round of community engagement, we're still defining what that means. So.
Gotcha. I have been out to some of the Planning and Development Services zoning code rewrite community meetings, and some of the information there has proven pretty impactful in the way that they have presented it, both the in-person meetings as well as the online format of sort of outlining what the current proposals are and the methodologies that they've used to incorporate community feedback. And if we have sort of those, that sort of skeleton built, I think that has proven to be a pretty successful model for engagement. And if there are opportunities in the future as we do move through some of these policy proposals to sort of potentially team up with the other department, that may also prove useful, as in some of these meetings, folks have already begun asking about water infrastructure and other climate action related questions that they have as we look to update our zoning policy. And I'm certainly open to continuing to provide ideas and input and connections however I can.
Thank you, Chair. And I would say I think the city and community engagement team, they work pretty close together. So
Right.
we can take that recommendation and make sure they get with the PDS community engagement.
Awesome. Commissioner Crowley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Royce, thank you for your presentation. It's actually very exciting to see progress being made in this particular topic. I had a couple, I guess one is kind of an internal question is the water renewal group process and effort going to be kind of integrated with the subcommittee that's recently formed of the Public Works Commission on water renewal in general? Will this be part of that subcommittee's activities? Hi, Steve.
Yeah, and I'll let Steve answer that. I can see him.
I'll take this one. Chair, Commissioner Crowley, yes. Our intention is to route, like we'll have in the subcommittee, we'll have a conversation about a policy piece that we want to bring to the commission and kind of have a working session around, okay, here's what we're thinking, here's how we came to these conclusions, here's how we'd like to phrase, here are some of the key considerations. Can we just kind of chew on this in this meeting at the subcommittee level? And we'll take that feedback, integrate, and then go to the larger commission. So yes, it's our intention to have this as a key part of the subcommittee process.
Okay, thank you. The second question, Royce, is have there been similar projects attempted and completed elsewhere in the country or elsewhere outside the country that you're aware of? And if so, how have they worked out?
There are a lot, I would say, over the country, especially, California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, even Washington. And honestly, as far as to my knowledge, they've all been very successful, depending on what they're trying to accomplish and things like that. And but we're try to keep up on those as much as we can. But yeah, they've been successful, I would say.
So there's models to point to that, so we're not doing something that's first ever. It's something that's been done successfully elsewhere.
Yeah.
The value of this is really significant. The priority policies issues, I think Vice Chair Ellis mentioned this. I'm particularly interested in the second one, the Water Authority, and I think it's a discussion we should probably have offline to start with. But I'd like to, I think your two top priorities make a lot of sense. But I think some of the issues associated with those priorities may be best held, the discussion may be best held offline.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner. And oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that, where there's been several or many, recycled water projects done in other parts of the nation. But as far as Idaho goes, there's only been a few very small projects. So it's pretty new for Idaho, for Idaho Department of Environmental Quality and Idaho Department of Water Resources. So.
And I would just add in, Chair Gravatt, that to Royce's point, we have been looking at some of the other programs in the West in particular that have been successful, and we're certainly emulating the parts of those programs that have been successful. That said, we are trying to do it a little bit differently in Boise, in that I think the community engagement piece is going to be front and center throughout the process. So even from the how and the why, we went out to the community. Let's I think we know, but let's confirm, and we tweak some things based on what we heard. I think similarly, our process will be different in that regard. Some other folks have done it this way, but not many. And so I'm excited to see how this plays out, because I think it will help the public. It'll help create buy-in with the public, that they feel a part of the process, truly a part of the process, because we want to hear from them and hear their perspective. So I'm excited to see how we integrate that moving forward.
And Chair, if I may, I think one of the things we've recognized that differentiates the city of Boise, we're not reacting to an imminent crisis. And I think we've mentioned that before, but I do think it's worth mentioning again that we are proactively planning for potential future states and planning for growth and capacity needs and also water challenges. And then to Commissioner Crowley's comments on the policies and kind of what we're learning from other places, I think you're starting to hit on something that makes these policies really important, is taking what we're learning from other places, but then really making them authentic to Boise. And so being a good neighbor here might mean something different than another program, or it might come at the forefront in a different sort of way. Our highest and best use could look different than another place. And so it's allowing us to learn from that sort of national and international expertise, but then also bring it hyper local and test it against what our community needs. So we'll, I guess, hearing that comment and question, we'll try to weave some of that, what we're learning in other places and how we're applying that here in Boise back when we present with you all.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Seeing none, I'll toss it back to you.
Great. And I think that actually is the end of the presentation. So,
All right, then
Chair.
we'll wrap it up then.
yeah, Chair, council member, commissioners, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, and I believe that is it for our regular agenda items. And then the next on our full agenda is the director's reports. Any updates that you would like to highlight from those, Director Burgos?
Chair Gravett, excuse me. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention. I wanted to apologize to Commissioners Morgan and Ellis for having to cancel the Climate Action Subcommittee first meeting. That's the day I got my positive test. So but I apologize. We had to cancel kind of at last second. So we were not able to have our first Climate Action Subcommittee meeting. We did, however, have our first Water Renewal Subcommittee meeting. And we had Commissioner Crowley and Commissioner Gravatt at that meeting. No major items came out of that. It was more of a kind of a meet and greet, establish how we want to run the meetings, a standing agenda. I gave some examples of kind of the people policy type issues that we're going to be bringing to the subcommittee. And I used an example of the report that we're developing from the Lander Street Water Renewal Facilities Program, the program management out there on the kind of project reporting, a risk log that we're developing, financial reporting, schedule, safety, etc. And that'll be something that the subcommittee will see on a meeting by meeting basis to give them an overview of how the programs are performing. We'll start with Lander Street, but as we get the West Boise program up and running, we'll include that as well. A big part of that is just transparency, that we want to make sure that one, we're tracking. I want you to know that we're tracking all this very closely, the financials and the schedule and project performance, because we owe that to the ratepayers. We are making major investments and we want to try to do as best we can to make those smartly. But then once we make a decision to build something, let's make sure we're executing as best we can. So anything to add, Chair or Commissioner Crowley, on the first subcommittee meeting?
I'll just add that as a participant on the subcommittee, it is a very clear and impressive way of presenting some very detailed and technical information that I look forward to learning more. And to my peers on the Climate Action Subcommittee, you are in for a treat when you get your meeting once your subcommittee kicks off.
I would echo the chair's comments, Steve, and I think it's going to be really productive. I'm looking forward to future discussions and getting into the weeds and the details of how projects move along and the effort that's going into to monitor that effort. So
Great.
I think it's going to be very productive.
Well, we're looking forward to it as well. It'll be a good check on some of the major projects that we're moving forward with, but also, as I mentioned, the policy piece as well. We can test some things and have and kind of chew on some concepts in those subcommittee meetings. Chair, the other thing I wanted to mention was at one point, and I can't remember when it was, there was excuse me, some interest expressed in touring some facilities. We used to do that in the past, pre-COVID. I'd really like to start getting back on that. And so at some point I'm working with Kathy and we're trying to think about, in the past, what we would do is, for example, we'd go give a tour of the farm, 20 Mile South farm for the commission. And we'd actually hold our commission meeting at the farm and then tour afterwards or beforehand. Excuse me. We're coming up with some concepts, but I do want to get the commissioners out and looking at some of the facilities. There's just no substitute for kind of boots on the ground, seeing how these facilities work, the complexity, and my favorite part is just the dedication of staff and the passion that they have for their work. It comes out in the tours. You can't substitute. You can't fake it either. So know that we're working on that, and we'll be in touch with trying to coordinate schedules in the coming months. It's going to be, it's always a challenge, but just something to be aware of for the for the commissioners to know that I can't remember who asked about it, but it didn't fall on deaf ears. And then I think that was, let me double check. Excuse me. I think that's it on my end.
Commissioner Crowley.
Mr. Chair, thanks. Just kind of a bookkeeping issue. At our last meeting, we moved to amend the agenda for the July meeting to remove the topic enhance the river update to this meeting. And I'm wondering if my memory serves me correct or not on that. If so, just want to mention it, that I don't know if we need to do anything about it, but I know there's some guidelines about sticking to the agendas.
Chair, Commissioner Crowley, unfortunately, I wasn't at the July meeting, and maybe I'll defer to staff that may have been there. I apologize. Haley, by chance, do you have any additional?
Yeah, Chair, Commissioners, Steve, my apologies. I don't know, Ed, as far as like the logistics of moving it. I think the motion was to move it here. I think I ended up out sick, and there was a couple of other pieces there. And then, of course, Kate, who would normally present, is on vacation right now. So I think that was just a miss in stating August, but really just needing it to be at a future meeting. We want to make sure when we bring that to you all, we're prepared with the information. So I don't know if there's anything technically that needs to be changed, but we will be back to talk about the Enhance the River framework and next steps.
Okay, thank you.
It does look like our motion from our minutes at the last meeting was to move the item to this meeting. So I think that just to be safe, it may behoove us to have a motion to postpone that agenda to a future meeting as determined by staff. And
Chair, I would look, is Mary by chance Grant, our attorney, is she and is she giving the thumbs up? She's our.
Hey, Steve, it's Ed.
Oh, Ed, great.
Hey, I'm here today. It sounds like it wasn't on this agenda, and so we can't go back in time and put it on this agenda. I think that I think staff will take it up and put it on an agenda in the future. I don't see there being any substantial harm. Nobody's going to be not able to, state their piece about it. So I believe that if and when staff puts it on an agenda, that will cure any defect. So I don't think any motion is currently necessary since it's not on today's agenda to sum things up.
works for me. Thank you. And thank you for bringing that to our attention, Commissioner Crowley. So circling back, were there any other updates on the director's reports?
That's all I had, Chair.
All right. Anything else to come before the commission today? All right. Hearing none, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Chair Cravat,
Yes, Commissioner Ellis.
I motion that we adjourn the meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Commissioner Morgan, thank you. All those in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, the same sign? Hearing none, the motion carries and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.